Hi everyone. So today we're gonna create a code to calculate the monthly household experience for someone. Currently, we have a Scratch program which looks like this. We can change this up to make it look like a professional office where someone comes in to analyze their monthly expenses. Let's choose a indoor office setting. Um, I guess something like this. And we can also include an appropriate sprite, someone who looks professional. I'll go to people and like check it out. I think this person looks pretty professional. I'll remove this one's professional sprite and this is a sprite to manage. I'll just increase the size a little, and this is a sprite that we interact with. So currently, I'm just gonna set up our sprite so that he is at this position whenever we run this code. I'll also create a lot of different variables which I will set to 0 when we start creating them during the code. So let's go part by part. I'll run this code when the sprite is clicked. So when I click on the sprite, I would ask him some questions, and based on that, I'll calculate my monthly expenses and my monthly take-home money and stuff. So first, we calculate the take-home salary for a person. The take-home salary of a person is the salary he earns yearly. So a person would earn a yearly salary. We can ask the person what the salary is. What is your yearly salary? And we get that answer in this answer variable. Um, then we have to remove taxes from this. We normally get around 26% of a tax in New York. The different states have different taxes. Let's assume all states have an overall tax of 30%. So basically, what we're calculating here is called a take-home pay. I'll make a variable for that. So the take home pay is something that you create after calculating the expenses as well. So this is basically a take home salary, which I'll calculate first. We'll calculate the take home pay later using this. So the take home salary is basically the 30% subtracted from your yearly salary, which is basically 70% of your yearly salary. So based on the answer, I'll set my variable to 70% of my yearly salary. So I'll just multiply this by 0.7, and that is my take home salary. Always remember to mark the correct variable. And I can, based on this answer, I can say I'll use two joins to just display a person's take home salary. So I can say your take home salary is I'm sorry, a dollar sign, and then this variable. So I can have this under when sprite is clicked. But if I want to do two, three tasks like calculating the expense and then calculating and displaying the expenses, then I can't do everything in just one. It just looks a little tedious. So instead of doing when sprite is clicked, I'll try to do something different this time. So I'm gonna use the when a particular button is pressed. So I can use any keys here, any keys from the keyboard. I'll use the number keyboard so that we just can keep track of every task. So when we press 1, we find out what our take home salary is. Let's create another one where we calculate the monthly expense for a person. So let's make this 2 to find the monthly expenses. Uh, so what we're supposed to do for monthly expenses is we need to ask what are the different expenses the person has throughout the year. It can be a yearly expense for certain situations, like the yearly subscription. It can be a monthly expense, like buying medicines. It can be a weekly expense, like bus fare or something like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to be creating three variables. We can do this multiple ways. We can ask 7 different questions. We can store the values in 7 different variables, and then we can add that up. I'm going to do something different instead. I'm going to be creating only 3 variables. So I'm going to make a variable for monthly expense, mon, then one for yearly expense, year, and then one for weekly expense, week. Okay, I have these three variables. If you don't want these variables to appear here, you can just like click on this and uncheck them. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask a question. I'm also gonna use the repeat block. So I'll just set that up first. And I'm gonna ask 7 different questions. So I'm gonna repeat it 7 times. So the question will be, what is the expense for? Then I actually can store this answer somewhere, but I currently don't care about the answer. You can make a list and store that answer in there. You can store the answer in some variable if you want to say that. I particularly don't feel like I want to store this, so I'll not do it. My next question will be, uh, is this a weekly, monthly, or yearly expense? And I'll wait for the answer. The answer is stored in this variable. And now I'm going to use a if then else block. I can also use a if block 3 times. It's fine. I'll do it using an if block 3 times. So what I'm looking for is like what happens when the answer is weekly, a monthly, or a yearly, and I'm using equal to operator to find if the answer matches any of these 3 values. I'm just going to duplicate this twice and paste it here. So I'll stop this in the meantime. Yeah. So our first option is weekly. The second option is monthly. The third option is yearly. Okay, we have these 3 options, and based on the answer, we can also ask another thing. I'll keep this in the middle in the meantime. I'll remove this, add this here, then add this whole thing here. Yeah. So this is the third question that we ask. Our second question will be, how much was the expense? Okay. So this is going to give us an answer which we want to store. So I'll use another variable. I'll create that. I'll name it cost, and I'll set cost to that answer because we're going to be using this now. Now that we have this, based on the answer, if it's a weekly expense, I'm going to add the answer to weekly. I think it's called week here. Or I'll use instead of setting, I'll just use change week by cost. And we're just going to repeat this now. Change month by cost for monthly, and change year by cost. So what does this mean? What we're doing is we're adding weekly cost to overall weekly cost. We're adding monthly cost to overall monthly cost, and we're adding yearly cost to overall yearly cost. So that's what we're doing. And it doesn't matter now what the question is. Like you can answer it anyway, and like you can calculate all the yearly cost, all the weekly cost, and all the monthly cost. So instead of making like 7 different variables or however many different variables, you're doing this in like 3 variables or 4 variables using the repeat function. So now you'll calculate all these 3 values. What generally happens is in the end we calculate average monthly expense and not even yearly expense, because then using the monthly expense we can calculate what the average take home pay will be for a person. So we just have to convert all these weekly expenses into monthly expenses and all these yearly expenses into monthly expenses. The monthly expenses are going to be fine, and we're just going to figure out how we're going to do this. So just to calculate all the expenses, I'm just going to create another variable, average or like just let's just call it expense, EXP. That's gonna be easier. This is the average monthly expense, and that's what I'm gonna find right now in the end. And this will be the sum of all these expenses, a monthly version of these expenses. So first, what will be the version of weekly expenses? How do you convert weeks to months? A month has 4 weeks, so every week, on an average, it has 4 weeks. So every week, we're just going to convert it into, we're just going to multiply it by 4, so we get the monthly expenses, average monthly expenses for all weekly expenses. So we just do that now. We just multiply week by 4. For monthly, we just keep it as it is. So I'll just drag them on here. And for yearly, a year has 12 months. So we just like divide that year by 12. So we get the average monthly expense for the yearly expenses. So we're just going to do that. We use a divide operator and just divide yearly expenses by 12. And we just have to add all these three. So we use the add operator twice. First time to add these two, and second time to add these two. I'll just put this here and I'll just drag this here. So this is the overall picture that we have, which we just directly put in expense. And that's it. You calculated the average monthly expense. The only problem here is will occur if we have too many decimal places, which we don't want. We only want like 2 decimal places, up to max 2 decimal places. So I'm going to round this experience value because it's going to be a really high number. So in terms of decimals, so simple rounding, I'm just going to set experience. I'm going to do this in one step. You can do this in 3 steps. So simple rounding, I'm going to multiply EXP by 100 first. I'm going to multiply this by 100. And then I'm going to round this value. I'm looking for the round operator. Yeah, this is it. And then I'm going to divide this value by 100. And that should round whatever value you have over here to do 2 decimal places. It is up to you. You can do this in 3 steps, but these are the steps. And if you do this in proper order, you can do it in 1 step. And like this is doing that in 1 step. And that is your average monthly expense. You can, in up to 2 decimal places, you can say that. And I'm going to put in the joins again. The average monthly expense is, I'm using another join to put the $sign. Yeah, I take that much time to find the $sign. I am a computer engineer, by the way. So yeah, that's gonna be it. I may have not put the spaces properly, but you guys make sure you do that so the text is pretty clear, so that it looks good here as well. I did put it there. I may have missed it here and here. So that's it. That was our second task where we calculate the average monthly expense, which this person will tell us. Now going to our third task, I go back to control, or sorry, events. When key is pressed, I'll just use 3 here. Yikes, where's number 3? Yeah, here it is. So now finding what percentage of our salary goes into our expense. Our expense is like an average monthly expense. So if we want to calculate how it affects our yearly salary, we just have to multiply that value by 12. So we use the multiplication operator, and we're dealing with percentages here, so we have to divide it and then also multiply the whole thing by 100 as well. So finding the finding the percentage of expense that is part of our salary, we just first use the take home salary, and then that is going to be what we divide that value from. Then we take our expense, our monthly expense, multiply that by 12. That is our yearly expense. We divide this value and then multiply this whole value by 100, and that gives you the percentage of your what percentage of your salary is your expense. Oh, sorry, that's 100. And we put this in, like, you can put this in a variable. I don't want to, so I'll just put this in. You can also round this value because percentages look better without a decimal place. You can put this whole thing inside a round operator without decimals, and you can. I'm just going to use a join to say what the percentage is. Two joins again. The How do I say this? Your expense is, and then I use this. Then I use the percentage sign. Then I add another join where this is the first part, and this is going to be second half of your salary. I think that is correct English phrasing, and yep, it looks gigantic, but you can do this whole thing in like one step instead of like making 3-4 steps here, and that is your percentage salary. And now the fourth and final thing that we do is find out the take-home pay. Your take-home pay is the pay that you subtract, that you get after you subtract your expenses from your salary. So I'm going to number 4 now. So here, like we previously did, we just have to first multiply the expenses by, I'll just enlarge this so that you guys can see. We have to multiply our expenses by 12 to get our yearly expenses. We subtract this answer from our yearly salary that we get after we take out the taxes. Our salary should be greater than our expenses, otherwise we're doing something wrong, which we're doing here. And now, whatever this price is, that is your, I'll just create a variable just to show what it is. Your take home pay. And this is the amount of money you take home after you remove your salary. So we set our take home pay to this, and then in the end, you can do this in one step. I'm just making a variable just to show what it is. And you do the usual double join of your take home pay is, and you put in this variable and you put a dollar sign. Remember to have 2 spaces in the middle. That's it. And that is how you calculate your taxes. All the best for people. I think the tax is extended to June, and that is the end of this. You just do this. Now the most important thing, all the variables that you created, just go to the top and set them to 0. I think I created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you set all your variables to 0, which is just makes it your default. I'm just going one by one as per my list. That would make it easier for me. Here, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm missing something. Month, week, salary, take home pay, take home salary, and I think it's cost. Yep, and that is it. So remember to make all your variables 0, and this should help you out.